Digital Minimalism by Newport is easily one of my most recommended books of all time. No matter who is asking me what they should read, I always include this on my list. I can say without a doubt that out of all the books I've read in my life, this is the one that has changed my life the most. If you follow me on Tumblr, then I'm sure you've heard me talk about it plenty of times over the years, so I figured that I might as well further immortalize my love of this book right here on YouTube. So without further ado, here are some of my favorite quotes from Digital Minimalism. The first quote is as follows. An endless bombardment of news and gossip and images has rendered us manic information addicts. End quote. Information addict is such a great way to put it. We constantly desire to see new posts every time we open up an app, even if we don't read them all. We've gotten used to taking in hundreds or even thousands of pieces of information every day in the form of tweets, photos, headlines, and videos, with less than 5% being things that we actually need to see. We have trained ourselves to do this every day, and if we don't, we feel extremely bored, dissatisfied, and we experience the fear of missing out. Even when you're not truly having fun or being entertained, you still need to scratch the itch for more information. More headlines, more celebrity gossip, more aesthetic pictures, more videos. We're not really meant to know big stories of every tragedy that's happening all over the world, especially since we are powerless to do anything about it. So instead, we just get filled with more fear and anger. You also don't even remember all of the information you take in. Going through so many whiplashes of emotion with every scroll, but not even retaining anything of value that makes it worth it. The next quote says, "The digital declutter. As I've argued, aggressive action is needed to fundamentally transform your relationship with technology. The digital declutter provides this aggressive action. This process requires you to step away from optional online activities for 30 days. During this period, you'll wean yourself from the cycles of addiction that many digital tools can instill and begin to rediscover the analog activities that provide deeper satisfaction. You'll take walks, talk to friends in person, engage your community, read books, and stare at the clouds. Most importantly, the declutter gives you the space to redefine your understandings of the things you value most." End quote. This is pretty much a shorter version of my None Mode challenge, which is 100 days, but Cal's declutter is just 30 days. Like he said, aggressive action is needed. Quitting cold turkey is needed. Many people feel opposed to the thought of completely eliminating their online habits and always instead suggest just reducing them, saying that they should be allowed to indulge an hour a day. But the thing is, if you were capable of being satisfied with just an hour a day, you'd already be using these services for just an hour a day. You lack the ability to self-regulate. This is why you've been struggling with this addiction for so many years. By completely eliminating it, you're forcing yourself to, 1, realize that you actually can function without it, and 2, you will be required to form new habits and muscle memory shortcuts. After you've gone multiple days without Twitter, your hand won't instinctively open the app when you grab your phone first thing in the morning. Like I said, the reason you've gotten addicted in the first place is because you aren't able to self-regulate and you indulge far more than you need to, which comes at a detriment that you can't stop repeating day after day. You need to approach this in a binary way, which is black or white, yes or no. No room for gray areas. Either you're using TikTok or you're not. That harsh reset for a significant period of time, not just one weekend, is needed. And during that time, when you put your energy towards more meaningful activities, you won't miss the scrolling and passiveness. You'll be refreshed and relieved. The next quote says, "The declutter acts as a jarring reset. You come into the process a frazzled maximalist and leave an intentional minimalist." End quote. Yes, it will be jarring. You will still have muscle memory that makes you want to instinctively open certain apps. You'll unlock your phone for no reason. You'll come to a time where you're about to ride an Uber or the subway or eat lunch alone, and your brain will be like, "Are you sure you don't want to go online? You'll be bored if you don't, and it's just a few minutes, no big deal." You'll have to catch yourself and intentionally say no and redirect your thoughts to a more suitable option, like listening to a podcast or reading a book. You won't be able to just move on autopilot anymore because your autopilot is full of destructive habits. But as you redirect yourself day after day, it gets so much easier and new habits start to form. It's so worth it. The next quote I have for you says, People don't succumb to screens because they're lazy, but instead because billions of dollars have been invested to make this outcome inevitable. End quote. This is true, but I think it's only half true. It doesn't paint the full picture, and it still minimizes our own accountability. Yes, these apps have been engineered by incredibly talented people who do whatever they can to keep us engaged, staying on their sites for longer, and hooking us so that we keep returning. They understand how our brains work, they understand psychology, they track our data and statistics to pinpoint exactly which features have the most and least impact on our usage, and they tweak them accordingly to continuously up our engagement. Yes, billions of dollars have been spent and will continue to be spent to keep this outcome going strong. But I don't think we should completely infantilize ourselves and make it seem as though we don't have any autonomy and someone has strapped us to a chair and forced us to scroll all day against our will. At the end of the day, just like with drugs or alcohol, we have to be aware of the dangers and do our part to keep our usage healthy by either restraining completely or using it responsibly. Unfortunately for the early crop of social media users, there was no data available for them to see how harmful it could be, just like cigarette smokers many decades ago. But now we know, and we can't always throw our hands up and say, it's not my fault, it's the algorithm's fault, because that doesn't lead to changed habits. So it's important to acknowledge how we got here, the reason why these services are so addictive, but also that we have the power to quit this drug. Next quote. We didn't sign up for the digital lives we now lead. They were instead, to a large extent, crafted in boardrooms to serve the interests of a select group of technology investors. End quote. No one signed up to Twitter or Instagram saying, I can't wait to be addicted to this and check it 20 times a day. A lot of these social media sites were sold to us under the guise of it being something for you to simply use to stay in touch with family, share some photos, and see your little cousin who lives in a different state. Harmless, wholesome fun that probably won't take up much of your day, maybe not even something that you use on a weekly basis. But when you implement like buttons, have visible follower counts, highlight users by putting their posts on the front page or trending section, develop an algorithm that favors certain content over others, pushes controversial or inflammatory content to the eyes of all users, and make monetization possible, where people have a financial incentive to post popular content, you can't pretend to be shocked that users spend more and more time online. This creates competition where people want more likes and followers so as to not be negatively compared to their peers. If all of your peers have 1,000 followers and you only have 50, that will make you feel some type of way, and others will perceive you differently, even though that number doesn't matter in the slightest. None of this was done to make us enjoy their sites more. It's all done for financial gain back to the company. The more time you spend logged on, the more ads you can see, which means the more money they get. When you signed up for Facebook in 7th grade, you just wanted to see your friends. Next quote. Our soul can be understood as a chariot driver struggling to rein two horses, one representing our better nature and the other our baser impulses. End quote. That's what makes addiction so hard to deal with. It's not like we don't know that what we're doing is harmful. It's that we do know, but we can't convince our brain to say no when the moment comes and the urge is really strong and it's so easy to get a hold of it. We know we should be writing that essay that's due tomorrow, but our impulses want us to watch a few more hours of YouTube instead. We know right from wrong, but day after day we choose the wrong habit. I truly believe that one of the best things you will ever be able to do for yourself is learn to be more consistent with making choices that benefit your better nature rather than giving into impulses. Next quote. He asks us to treat the minutes of our life as a concrete and valuable substance, arguably the most valuable substance we possess, and to always reckon with how much of this life we trade for the various activities we allow to claim our time. End quote. I've said this before on Tumblr, but imagine that when you die and your life flashes before your eyes, a huge chunk of it is just you staring at a screen and scrolling. Our life is so short, and the hours we are given every day really are valuable and should be treated as such. This doesn't mean we have to go skydiving every day, but I think it's just as thrilling to replace our phone time with getting better grades, reading more books, becoming better cooks, exploring your city on nights out, building your dream body, and taking all of the local classes that interest you. Our time should be spent in a way that makes us love life, not distracts us from living it. Next quote. The sugar high of convenience is fleeting. and the sting of missing out dulls rapidly, but the meaningful glow that comes from taking charge of what claims your time and attention is something that persists." End quote. I can attest to this a million times over. This is one of the most important things I had to learn and one of the best gifts I've ever given myself. The gift of my time and attention. It becomes so evident when you look back on the past few years and you realize that of all the free time available to you, you barely took advantage of it and don't have much to show for it. You still have that same 20 pounds you wanted to lose 3 years ago, but never committed to gym sessions because you succumbed to your phone every night. You didn't get into your dream school, even though you probably could have, had you not sacrificed your grades for useless time spent online. You hardly go out and make memories. You're still a very beginner at that language you started learning 5 years ago. You never finished that course. You never did anything you said you would. Not because you didn't have the time, but because you foolishly wasted the time, and now you look back with regret and longing. When you decide that filling your days in meaningful ways is better than scrolling and being passive, you will blossom like never before and will take huge leaps when it comes to completing your goals. Next quote says, "Much in the same way that the innovation of highly processed foods in the mid-20th century led to a global health crisis, the unintended side effects of digital communication tools, a sort of social fast food, are proving to be similarly worrisome." End quote. I agree that social media is overall just like junk food. It has a time and place, and in some capacity, it can even be a very healthy thing to enjoy. But a constant diet of it? Terrible. Absolutely damaging and highly addictive. People who have a steady diet of fast food tend to not know their way around a kitchen much, and if you tell them they can't order out, they'll probably struggle to think of what's for dinner and definitely won't feel like putting in the effort to cook whatever meal they come up with, no matter how easy it is. The same goes for those who have a digital fast food diet. Take away their phone, and they will struggle to fill their days and curb boredom. Even doing something easy like reading a book or doing shallow cleaning seems so much more daunting. I believe that social media should be nothing more than a snack in your daily diet, where your meals should be high quality and meaningful activities with big returns in your life. Next quote, "Where we want to be cautious is when the sound of a voice or a cup of coffee with a friend is replaced with likes on a post." End quote. As mentioned earlier, much of social media was sold to us under the guise of being able to keep up with friends and family in a meaningful way used to supplement our real-life interactions with them. I think we can all agree that we have many people that we follow online but haven't seen or spoken to in literal years, with no plans or concrete intentions to change that anytime soon. We have this very false sense of connectedness to them, when in reality, we don't know them and they don't know us. Maybe once upon a time you did, but that was years ago. You've changed and grown since then, and they don't know the current you. If someone asked them what your dream career is, they'd say it was to be a singer, even though you stopped wanting that when you were in 6th grade. You aren't close anymore. Instead of actually connecting and forming a real bond, you just toss out the occasional like and annual happy birthday comment. Sparse social media interactions does not a lasting relationship make. Having 5 friends that you meet with in person frequently, have real conversations with, do activities with, and form real memories together will always feel infinitely better than 500 followers online you are merely acquainted with. If possible, you should always prioritize real-life interactions with people rather than online ones. Of course, it isn't always possible, such as when your family or friends live in a different state or country, but even a phone call or FaceTime session would make so much more of a difference than likes and comments. The next quote says, "Humans are naturally biased towards activities that require less energy in the short term, even if it's more harmful in the long term." End quote. Yes, it's definitely human nature to always want to take the easy way out no matter what. It's fast food over cooking a nutritious meal, spark notes instead of reading the book yourself, doing nothing instead of what you should actually be doing. The problem is that these activities don't immediately backfire. It takes time for the silent buildup to become a visible issue that you must tackle. You didn't gain all that weight from one trip to McDonald's. You didn't fail your class because you missed one study session. You didn't become a chronically online, talentless, passionless, skillless adult from one day on TikTok. It's the compounded buildup of you consistently making the easy choices that have now come back to bite you. You have to nip these habits in the bud, or else next year will be the same as this year, and 10 years from now, you'll be dealing with the same mess, if not worse. Next quote. Leisure lesson number 1. Prioritize demanding activity over passive consumption. End quote. This is not to say that we should never again engage in passive consumption, as there is absolutely a time and a place for it. But for those who have spent so many years of their life being passive every single day, racking up hours upon hours of time surfing the internet with no real need to do so, yes, you are someone who definitely needs to drastically reduce the amount of time you spend engaging in passive consumption. Drawing, painting, writing a story, writing poetry, reading, exercising, cooking, cleaning, studying, working, reorganizing, meditating, praying, going to church, making candles, making jewelry, sewing, knitting, journaling, building things, refurbishing your items, calling your mom, visiting your sister, scrapbooking, coding, playing an instrument, learning a language, baking, making business plans. The list goes on and on. These are just a few examples of demanding activities you should be focused on rather than scrolling if you're someone who needs to overcome an internet addiction and are learning to find more entertainment and satisfaction in the real world. Do you ever get jealous of people who play video games 10 hours a day and have nothing going for themselves? Of course you don't. But you feel jealous of people who are the same age as you but have written 3 books, or have mastered an instrument you like, or have taught themselves to fluently speak a language you like. We are impressed by skills that take time and effort, especially if it's technically accessible to us all, but we choose to waste our time being passive every day. Those who don't do that feel a genuine sense of satisfaction and pride in themselves and their abilities. Everyone should experience that, not just once when you were 12 and played on a soccer team, now as an adult and continuing on for the rest of your life. Next quote. We live in a world that is working to eliminate touch as one of our senses, to minimize the use of our hands to do things except poke at a screen. End quote. I really do consistently crave physical interactions with my devices, needing to touch something, really feel it, the buttons, the switches, the levers, to deconstruct my devices so that I don't have one sleek object that can do it all and therefore call for me to use every feature all the time, but rather single-use objects that allow me to focus on that one thing and ignore the possibility of accessing other features. I started using an iPod Classic again so that I'm not also on Google and texting and on Amazon at the same time as listening to music. I read physical books instead of ebooks or audiobooks. I've been jotting down thoughts in a small journal instead of using the Notes app for everything. That physical touch of diverse materials across single-use objects is honestly so much nicer than constantly feeling the smooth glass screen under my fingers all day. Poking at a screen is incredibly convenient, no doubt about it, but do I actually need every single thing I do to be done in the swiftest manner possible? Not really. The next quote I have for you says, "They seem to relieve him of the felt need to offer chattering interpretations of himself to vindicate his worth. He can simply point, the building stands, the car now runs, the lights are on. Boasting is what a boy does who has no real effect in the world, but craftsmanship must reckon with the infallible judgment of reality, where one's failures or shortcomings cannot be interpreted away." End quote. I find this to be a great way of removing the glamorous curtains of social media and being able to tangibly point at something and say, "This is mine. I did this." Someone who posts mood boards about certain lifestyles or aesthetics doesn't necessarily have those things themselves. You can run an account where you talk about luxury living and post images of all these fancy items and places, and people may perceive you as someone who lives a life of that ilk. But online perception does not always equal reality. Someone who has those things will continue to have them, whether they post it online or not, whether the world perceives them that way or not. A billionaire who wears basic t-shirts and unassuming accessories is still a billionaire, even if they aren't immediately judged to be one. Your real-life reality will always stand. This is why it's so important to have real-life accomplishments. You can make this, you can do this, you have this, you went there, etc. The way you interpret yourself or the image you put forward is not what will matter most. Instead, binary realities will be. These can't be taken from you, and they don't need any extra online validation or boasting to be meaningful. Next quote. You can't, in other words, build a billion-dollar empire like Facebook if you're wasting hours every day using a service like Facebook, end quote. I've quoted this one quite a few times on Tumblr because it really resonated with me when I first read it. People have all these big dreams and ambitions, but they spend all of their time using services that not only make other people richer, but prevents them from achieving those dreams. I also see it as the importance of not being so consumed by what other people are doing and being obsessed with watching strangers live their lives when you should be out doing big things and living your own life. Stop people watching, start doing. The next quote says, "It's too easy to be good-intentioned about adding some quality activity into your evening and then several hours of rabbit hole clicking and binge watching later, realize that the opportunity has once again dissipated." End quote. I genuinely believe that people with internet addictions are good-intentioned and very frequently have strong desires to do something else with their days, but the pull to easy dopamine in the form of scrolling and staring at videos is so strong that their desires can't come into fruition. When you want to do activities that aren't shallow in nature, it's important to literally disconnect yourself from online distractions to avoid sabotage. If you decide you're going to study tonight, delete apps from your phone, block websites, power off your devices if you must. Don't keep letting the same things that sabotaged you yesterday and the day before and the day before that continue to spoil your tomorrows. It's a terrible feeling to have a strong desire to do something positive and productive and look up and it's 9 p.m. and you realize that you wasted another day doing nothing. Enough is enough. The next quote says, "Once you start constraining your low-quality distractions with no feeling of lost value and filling the newly freed time with high-quality alternatives which generate significantly higher levels of satisfaction, you'll soon begin to wonder how you ever tolerated spending so many of your leisure hours staring passively at glowing screens." End quote. This is so incredibly true, it simply cannot be overstated. I can attest to this wholeheartedly. A meaningful, fulfilling, enjoyable life cannot be attained by rotting away year after year after year online. It starts out as just something fun, something relaxing, something leisurely, but eventually it starts eating up the hours of your days, and over time, you look back and realize that you spent years doing nothing. You had all these goals and all that potential just wasted away. Had you spent just a few of those YouTube or Instagram hours every day working out, learning that language, and studying, your life would be so different and you'd feel accomplished. When I became a digital minimalist, my life changed completely. The sheer amount of hours I spend dedicated to ballet, studying, fitness, and personal growth wouldn't be possible if I instead gave those time slots to social media, and I wouldn't be nearly as happy or satisfied with my life. Trading low-quality scrolling for high-quality activities is truly the key. Next quote, "If you're going to use social media, stay far away from the mobile versions of these services, as these pose a significantly bigger risk to your time and attention." End quote. I firmly believe that the mobility and easy access that social media has when it's on our phones, which are with us 24/7, is the main problem why we are so addicted to them. It's that we can indulge on a moment's notice at any time of day, anywhere we are. If you only have access to them on your computer, that means you can only use it when you're at home, or if you have a laptop, then only when you have it out. You're not going to bring your laptop with you to the bathroom or pull it out when you're in line at the grocery store like how you could with the mobile app on your phone. I do talk about phone addictions a lot, but a few days ago, I really sat down and considered the implications behind that term, and honestly, it's not really an accurate representation for what most of us deal with. Most people aren't addicted to their phones. They're addicted to their computer. By that, I mean, most people aren't simply calling and texting all day. It's the internet and YouTube and social media part of their phone, which is essentially just a computer, that are making them so heavily addicted to their phone. If you replaced your iPhone with a flip phone that can only call or text, I can guarantee that you wouldn't use it as much. You'd only use it when you are actually having direct communication with someone. The other 6 hours of screen time you typically have would disappear. More likely, though, only part of it would disappear, and the other part of it would be transferred to your actual laptop or desktop computer, where you'd access those sites instead, and your screen time would decrease because you're not going to keep your laptop in your hand like a phone or lug your desktop PC around everywhere you go. To break your so-called phone addiction, you need to deconstruct it so that it really is a phone, not a small portable computer. Leave the social media sites at home and let your phone be a phone. You don't need access while you're in the kitchen eating dinner or while you're outside walking somewhere. And the final quote I have for you today is as follows. Digital minimalists see new technologies as a tool to be used to support things they deeply value, not as sources of value themselves. They don't accept the idea that offering some small benefit is justification for allowing an attention-gobbling service into their lives, but are instead interested in applying new technology in highly selective and intentional ways that yield big wins. Just as important, they're comfortable missing out on everything else. End quote. If we stop to analyze the ROI on the services we use, many times we'd find that the return is abysmal, disgustingly low. I hear people say, I want to delete Instagram, but sometimes people DM me on there, and I'm like, you're willing to keep letting yourself spend several hours every week wasting time there, comparing yourself to other people and lowering your self-esteem, losing your ability to concentrate and focus on schoolwork, lessened time to do the things that matter to you, like getting your life in order, continued data harvesting and tracking, etc., just so a few people you aren't even that close to can message you occasionally? Just give them your number and tell them to text you. Delete that app. If your goal is to have a fantastic life with an abundance of meaning, all of the distractions that you allow into it must be highly worth it. They need to serve a very large purpose with big returns. When you let go of the services that give minuscule returns, you quickly realize that it's just not worth it to reintroduce them into your life. The time investment for negative returns isn't worth it. So there we have it, my favorite lines from digital minimalism. I can't stress to you enough how important it is that we reclaim our time and attention, especially as young people. Always remember that these are things that didn't even exist 20 years ago, so we are perfectly capable of continuing on either without it or with very sparse usage. I truly believe that the key to getting ahead in this day and age is to be the one who can disconnect and spend their time doing meaningful activities. You have to want better for yourself and to not let yourself be a mindless consumer anymore.